courtroom was silent. The only sound was the slow, heavy footsteps of a man in chains. Each step echoed like a drumbeat in the large, cold room. His hands were cuffed tightly. His prison uniform looked old and worn. His face was pale, and dark circles surrounded his tired eyes. People whispered as he passed by, but the man didn't look at anyone. He coughed hard. A deep, painful sound came from his chest. Then blood stained the side of his mouth. The guard beside him didn't. Stop. He only tightened his grip on the chain and kept walking. The man was dying. Everyone could see that his name was Raymond Hale. He had spent the last 10 years inside Blackridge Maximum Security Prison. People called him the Butcher of Hollow Street. They said he killed his wife in front of his daughter, they said. He never showed any regret. They said he was a monster. But that day, he looked more like a broken man than a monster. Judge Whitmore sat high on the bench, watching Raymond closely. "Bring the prisoner to the front," he said. Raymond took a shaky breath and stepped forward. His knees trembled. The guard held his arm to stop him from falling. Raymond looked up straight at the judge. Then his voice, weak but clear, broke the silence. "Your Honor," he said, "before I leave this world, I ask for one thing." The judge narrowed his eyes. "What is it?" Raymond's lips shook. I want to see my daughter. Just once. Just one hug. Before I die." Gasps filled the courtroom. A young woman sitting in the back row lowered her head. Her name was Alyssa Hale, Raymond's daughter. She didn't move. Her face was unreadable. The lawyers turned to look at her, waiting to see her reaction. But Alyssa sat still. 10 years had passed since the night everything changed. Alyssa was only 9 when her mother died. She had seen blood, screams, and flashing police lights.
Bye.
That night haunted her dreams for years. And now, the man accused of destroying her life was asking to see her. For what? A goodbye? She didn't even know if he deserved it. The judge looked around the room. "Is the daughter present?" One of the court officers nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. She is sitting in the back." The judge's voice softened. "Miss Hale, would you like to speak?" Alyssa slowly stood. Her legs felt like stone. Her eyes met her father's across the room. He looked older than she remembered, weaker, sadder. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run. Instead, she said nothing. Raymond dropped to his knees. "Please," he begged, coughing again, "before I leave this world, just one hug, just to know she's all right, just to feel her once more." His tears dropped onto the cold floor. The guard tried to lift him, but he refused. "Let me kneel. I am not a man anymore. I'm just a father begging for his child's forgiveness." Alyssa's heart pounded. She remembered the night it all ended. Her mother's scream. Her father standing in the doorway holding something. The way the police dragged him away while he shouted her name. They said he killed her. Mother. He said he didn't. But the truth was lost in the blood and panic. Now this dying man was here, asking for her. Not money, not freedom. Just one final hug. Why now? After 10 years of silence. Why did he wait so long? The courtroom waited for her answer. The judge, the jury, the press eyes were on Alyssa. But she only sat down and stared at the floor. She didn't know what to feel. Raymond stayed on his knees, breathing heavily. His cough grew worse. The doctor stepped forward from the side and whispered something to the judge. The judge nodded. Slowly, court will take a 10-minute recess. 2 guards helped Raymond back up, but he collapsed before they could hold him. He hit the floor hard. Panic filled the room. The doctor rushed in. "We need an ambulance." Raymond lay there, eyes half open. His lips moved. Alyssa stood again. Her legs moved without thinking. She stepped toward her father for the first time in 10 years. Everyone watched. Was she going? To hug him? Say goodbye? Slap him? But she stopped 5 steps away. Their eyes met. No words, just silence. The medic placed an oxygen mask on Raymond's face. He's crashing. In the chaos, no one noticed the small paper Raymond had dropped. When he fell, a note. It slid across the floor and stopped near Alyssa's feet. She picked it up slowly. Her hand shook as she opened it. It was in her father's handwriting. "I never killed your mother. She told me to run that night, but I stayed. I took the blame to protect you from something worse. Forgive me. I never stopped loving you." Alyssa froze. What did he mean? What was worse? Her eyes rose again. But Raymond was unconscious now. The paramedics were lifting him onto a stretcher. Tears filled her eyes. Her mind raced. Was her whole life a lie? Was her father innocent? Or was this just another trick from a dying man? The judge called out, "Miss Hale, do you want to accompany him to the hospital?" Alyssa looked at her hands, then at the letter, then at the man being wheeled out of the courtroom, chained, weak. Maybe not the monster she thought. She turned to the judge and said one word, double quotes. Yes. The doors closed behind her, but the truth was only beginning to open. The judge pauses the trial when the prisoner collapses mid-sentence. Suspense. What secret letter does he whisper to the officer before fainting? The ambulance left with sirens howling. Inside the courtroom, no one spoke. Everyone's eyes were still locked on the doors that had just closed behind Alyssa and her father. The judge removed his glasses and leaned back slowly. His face, normally strict and unreadable, looked tired. "This court is now in recess until further notice," he said softly. Reporters whispered, lawyers gathered their papers. But no one really wanted to leave. The air still carried the shock of what had just happened. A dying prisoner had begged for one hug. And his daughter, the girl who once swore never to speak his name again, walked out with him. Even the security guards looked to stay neutral, looked unsettled. In the hallway, Alyssa walked behind the stretcher as paramedics pushed Raymond toward the hospital elevator. His eyes were closed, his breath shaky and slow. The chains still wrapped around his wrists, making a soft clinking sound with every bump of the gurney. Suddenly, his lips moved. One of the guards leaned in. "Take this," Raymond whispered, barely able to speak. His trembling hand reached toward his chest pocket. The officer hesitated. "Sir," Raymond coughed blood again. "In my shirt pocket." "It's for her." The guard reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, yellowed envelope. There was a single word written on it in faded ink. "Alyssa." The officer looked at her, unsure. "He wants you to have this." Alyssa took it with shaking hands, but she didn't open it. Not yet. The ambulance door shut. Alyssa sat in the front passenger seat, gripping the envelope tightly. Her mind was racing. What was this letter? What could he possibly say that he hadn't already? 10 years of silence, and now this. Back at the courtroom, one man didn't leave. Stood quietly near the back row, wearing an old brown coat and a cap that covered his eyes. He hadn't spoken the entire time. But now he pulled out a small notebook from his pocket and wrote something. Letter passed. Witness saw everything. Then he tucked the notebook away and walked out the back door. Unnoticed at the hospital remand. Was moved into the ICU. Doctors connected machines to his body and tried to stabilize his condition. A team of 3 nurses worked quickly while a police guard waited outside the room. Alyssa sat alone in the waiting area, the letter still in her hands. She stared at it for minutes, then hours. Finally, she tore it open. Inside was a short letter only, a few lines. But every word hit her like a wave. "Alyssa, if you are reading this, then I am either gone or close to it. I never stopped thinking about you, not one day. I wanted to protect you, even if it meant becoming your enemy. That night, your mother didn't die because of me. She died because she was going to tell the truth about who really killed your uncle, about the man with the tattoo on his hand. Forgive me. I stayed quiet to keep you safe." "Hey, Dad." Alyssa blinked. Tattoo. Her uncle. What was this? Her Uncle Ben died 2 weeks before her mother was killed. Everyone said it was a drug overdose. But her mother cried every night after that, whispering things on the phone to someone named Dee. The letter shook in her hands. Was this the truth? Was her father innocent? But then why didn't he speak up all these years? Why let her hate him? She stood up and walked to the ICU door, looking through the small window. Raymond lay still, breathing but barely. His eyes were closed. Machines beeped beside him. A tube helped him breathe, and still he wore chains. Meanwhile, the police station, the guard who had received the letter from Raymond pulled out his own phone. He opened a secure chat app and sent a message. He mentioned the tattoo. He knows. A reply came instantly. Then he must not leave that hospital alive. Back in the hospital hallway, Lissa was about to sit down when a nurse tapped her shoulder. "Are you his daughter?" Lissa nodded. The nurse gave her a warm, "Look, he said your name when he woke up. Just once." Tears filled Alyssa's eyes, but then the nurse said something else. He also kept saying the word locker and a number. 319 locker. What did that mean? Was there something hidden? Alyssa's brain sparked with questions. Was this another clue? Was her father trying to tell her where the real truth was? She stood up, heart racing. "Is there a staff locker room in this hospital?" The nurse blinked. "Yes, but..." "For employees only." Alyssa's voice was steady. "Please, need to see locker 319. Back inside Raymond's room, Raymond's eyelids fluttered. He opened his eyes, just barely, and whispered to himself, "She has to find it." "Do then." His heart monitor began to beat faster. His daughter watches the trial from the back row with cold eyes. Suspense. Why does she refuse to speak to anyone, even her lawyer? The hospital lights were cold. Alyssa stood in front of locker 319, heart pounding in her chest. The nurse had agreed to help, just for 5 minutes. She didn't ask too many questions. Maybe she saw the fear in Alyssa's eyes. Or maybe she just knew what it was like to live without answers. Alyssa held the small key she had found in her father's envelope. It had been taped inside, almost invisible. It's just a tiny silver key, with numbers etched on the side. 319. She inserted the key. It clicked inside. There was no jacket, no shoes, no bag, just a single black box, the size of a book. She opened it slowly. Inside the box, wrapped in a plastic hospital glove, was a flash drive. And a photo. The photo was old, showed her father and mother, standing beside a man she'd barely recognized. Then she saw it. A tattoo, clear as day on the man's right hand. A coiled snake with a dagger in its mouth. She gasped. The same tattoo her mother had drawn once in her journal. Same one she said haunted her past. Flashback 10 years ago, a 9-year-old Alyssa sat in the corner of her room, hiding under a blanket. Her parents were arguing again. This time it sounded different, angrier, more scared. Her mother's voice trembled. "Ray, if I speak, they'll kill us all. I'll take the fall if I have to," Raymond's voice shouted. "But they won't touch her." The next morning, her mother was dead, and her father was arrested. Present-day police SDATO and Detective Holden slammed the phone down. She went to the locker, said to his partner. His partner, Officer Greer, narrowed his eyes. "Did she find we don't know yet? Then we find her now." Back at the hospital, Lisa sat in the hallway again, her hands clutching the flash drive tightly. Her head was spinning. Body was numb. So many years of hate, so many tears. So many therapy sessions where she tried to forget her father's face. And now, the truth was starting to fall apart. But instead of feeling relief, she felt anger, deep, hot anger. Not just at her father, but at everyone. At the police who told her what to believe. At the judge who called her father a monster. At the family friends who told her she was better off without him. At her own silence, she had never told anyone what she saw that night. The small shadow outside the window, the tattoo she thought was just part of a dream. She had locked it all away. And now it was coming back, piece by piece. Courtroom. The next day, the court reopened. Raymond wasn't there. He was still in critical condition, but Alyssa walked in, holding a copy of the flash drive in her hand. Her lawyer stood beside her. The judge looked surprised. "Miss Hale, are you requesting to speak?" Alyssa didn't answer. She handed the flash drive to her lawyer. He looked confused. "What's on this?" She didn't reply. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we request to submit this flash drive as new evidence connected to the case against Raymond Hale." The prosecutor objected immediately. "Objection. This is highly irregular." The judge raised a hand. "Let me see the content." First, while the court reviewed the footage, Alyssa sat in the back row again. But this time, her eyes weren't cold. They were burning. Burning with 10 years of pain, 10 years of lies, and 10 years of being told to forget. The woman next to her leaned over. "You okay?" she asked softly. Alyssa didn't respond. She had nothing to say to anyone anymore, because for 10 years, no one had said the truth to her. Inside the judge's chamber, the judge sat at his desk, watching the footage from the flash drive. The room was silent. It was surveillance footage from an old hospital hallway, dated just 2 weeks before her mother's death. In the video, her mother was crying, talking to a man, the same man from the photo. Tattoo visible, they argued. Her mother kept pointing at something in a folder. Then the man pushed her against the wall and walked away. The judge leaned forward. This man wasn't Raymond Hale. This man was still out there. Back in the hallway, Lisa stood by the vending machine, staring blankly at the choices behind her. The guard who had taken the letter from her father approached. "Miss Hale," said politely. She turned slowly. "I need to ask you some questions," he continued. "Privately." "Hey." She raised an eyebrow. "Who sent you?" The guard smiled slightly. "Just come with me. It's about your father." But before Alyssa could move, someone grabbed her arm and pulled her back. It was the nurse from earlier. She whispered fast, "Don't go with him. He's not a real guard." Alyssa's eyes widened. The man reached into his coat. The nurse screamed, "Run!" A flashback shows the little girl being pulled away from her father's bloody hands. Suspense. Did he really kill her mother, or is something else hidden? The hallway turned into chaos. The fake officer reached into his coat. Alyssa didn't wait to see what came out. The nurse screamed again, and 2 real hospital security guards turned the corner just in time. The man ran. He pushed over a tray, knocked down a wheelchair, and disappeared into the stairwell. Code red on floor 3. A voice shouted through the speakers. "All exits locked." Alyssa was pulled back into the nurse's station. Her hands were shaking. Her legs felt like they would collapse. "Who was he?" she whispered. The nurse closed the blinds and locked the door. "I don't know. But someone doesn't want you finding the truth." Alyssa looked down at her phone. The flash drive copy was still in her pocket. She had barely begun to see what was on it. Now, someone was trying to stop her. Maybe forever. That night, Alyssa's APARTM, Anna Alyssa, sat on her bed, alone. In the dark, with her laptop open, she clicked the video files one by one. File 01. Her mother arguing with the man with the tattoo. File 02. A police report never submitted to court. It listed unknown male as a suspect in Ben Hale's death, her uncle. File 03. A voicemail. Her mother's voice crying softly. "Ray said he'll take the blame. He thinks it'll keep her safe. Told him not to, but he loves her too much. If anything happens to me, please show this to Alyssa. Please." Alyssa covered her mouth. Her mother had left her a message, one no one had ever given her, one that could have changed her life, but someone had buried it. Flashback.
Like the night I
Happened a younger Alyssa stood at the bottom of the stairs. She heard yelling. She peeked into the hallway. Her mother was crying. Her father had his arms around her, trying to hold her back. Then, a loud crash. The front door flew open. A man in a black hoodie and gloves stormed in. The snake tattoo on his hand was visible even in the dim light. Alyssa's mother shouted, "Take her upstairs." Raymond turned and yelled, "Go, Alyssa. Now." But she didn't move. The man raised a metal pipe. Raymond grabbed it. They struggled then. Her mother screamed. Blood splattered the wall. Alyssa screamed too. Seconds later, everything blurred. Police sirens. Blue lights. Shouting. Alyssa was pulled away by an officer. She tried to reach for her father, was now covered in blood. He didn't resist arrest. He just looked at her and said, "I'm sorry." Present Dewey Nextmore and Angelisa stood outside. The courthouse. Her lawyer rushed over. "I showed the judge the new evidence," he said. "He's reopening your father's case for review, but we need to act fast." Alyssa's face was pale. "There's something else," she whispered. "Someone tried to hurt me last night. Someone who knew I found the files." Her lawyer's eyes widened. Then they're watching you. She nodded slowly, I think. They've been watching me for years. Back at the hospital, Raymond opened. His eyes slowly. A blurry figure stood beside his bed. Not Alyssa. A man, wearing a coat, gloves, and a familiar tattoo. Raymond's heart monitor sped up. You should have stayed quiet. Old man, the stranger said, pulling out a syringe from his pocket. But just then Alyssa burst into the room. She had come back to check on him. One more time before the next hearing, the man turned, surprised. She didn't scream. She ran straight. At him. Get away from him. The syringe dropped to the floor. 2 security guards ran in seconds later, but the man was gone through the side door. Like a shadow, Raymond was shaking, barely conscious, but he looked at Alyssa and smiled. You came back. Alyssa's voice cracked. I'm not leaving again. Later that night, safe room at the hospital Rome lay in a secure room, guarded by 2 armed officers. Alyssa sat beside him, holding his hand. You took the blame for something you didn't do, she whispered. He nodded slowly. I had to. They threatened to kill you next. Tears ran down her face. But why didn't you say anything all these years? He looked at her with tired eyes. Because I knew no one would believe me. But they might believe you. Paused. And if they come for you again, promise me something.
What?
Don't run. She held his hand tighter. I won't. But inside her heart, a storm was rising. Because the past wasn't buried, it was waking up. And this time, it was coming for them both. A mysterious old man sits next to the daughter and hands her a photograph. Suspense. The photo shows her father. But with someone who was never supposed to be alive? The next morning, Alyssa arrived early at the courthouse. Her father was still recovering under tight security at the hospital. And she had barely slept. Every sound outside her apartment made her jump. Every stranger in the hallway made her heart beat faster. But today, something was different. She felt cold, but focused. She had a copy of the flash drive. She had her mother's voicemail. She had a photo of the man with the tattoo. And now, she was ready to speak, ready to fight. She sat quietly in the back row of the courtroom, waiting for her lawyer. That's when she noticed the old man. He sat 1 seat away from her, wearing a brown coat and a hat that covered most of his face. He smelled like dust and old paper. He looked like someone who didn't belong. Alyssa kept her eyes forward, but then he spoke. You're Raymond's daughter, said softly. She turned sharply. Yes, she said cautiously. Who are you? The old man didn't answer. Instead, he slid something toward her under the seat. A photo. Alyssa picked it up carefully. The photo was old, taken with a film camera. It showed her father standing beside another man. A man with the same tattoo on his hand, the snake, and a dagger. But what shocked her wasn't the tattoo. It was the face of the man standing next to her father. It was her uncle, Ben Hale, the same man who supposedly died of a drug overdose before. Her mother was murdered. Her hands shook. This isn't possible, she whispered. He didn't die, the old man said. He disappeared on purpose. Alyssa's voice cracked. Who are you? The old man finally looked at her. His eyes were sharp, alert. I was the detective assigned to your father's case 10 years ago. I believed him. They pulled me off before I could prove anything. Why? Alyssa asked, her throat dry. Because I found out too much. About the man with the tattoo? About your uncle? About your mother? He leaned closer. They weren't just murdered, or silenced. Flashback 3 weeks before the murdr. Ben Hale sits in a car with 2 men. He's nervous, sweating. You said I'd be protected, he says. One of the men lights a cigarette. Only if you shut up. You start talking to your sister, and everything falls apart. Ben looks out the window. She deserves to know the truth. No, Ben, the man says coldly. She deserves to live. Ben sighs. Then I guess I better disappear. Present day courthouse BNCH. Alyssa's mind raced. If my uncle is alive, then why hasn't anyone seen him? Because they hit him, the old man replied. The same people who tried to kill you at the hospital, but why? Alyssa asked. He paused before answering. Your uncle and your father were witnesses to something big. Something involving crooked cops and stolen money. Your mother wanted to go public with it. That's why she died. Your father stayed silent. To protect you, Alyssa felt sick. So all these years, I hated him for nothing. No, the old man said gently. You hated him for what they wanted you to believe. Alyssa looked at the photo again. Her father, her uncle, together. If this was real, then everything was about to change. Suddenly, the courtroom door opened. A man walked in wearing a suit, tall, clean, confident. Alyssa. But it was the same face from the photo. Her Uncle Ben Hale, not dead, not overdosed, alive, and walking into the courtroom like he owned it. She stood up so fast her chair fell behind her. Uncle Ben. The courtroom turned to look. Ben smiled softly. Alyssa, he said calmly, there's something I need to explain. But before he could speak, a gunshot rang out. Glass shattered behind him. People screamed. Ben hit the floor. Security guards shouted and rushed to the windows. Alyssa ducked behind the seats. Covering her head, the old man beside her grabbed her arm and whispered, that wasn't meant for him. It was meant for you. Her heart dropped. They're trying to clean up everything, he said. And you are the last piece. Chaos continued. The courtroom emptied. Police secured the area. The judge was escorted out. Alyssa crouched behind a bench, breathing fast. She looked at her uncle lying on the ground, blood on his shoulder. He was alive. Wounded, but alive. She stared at the photo again. It was all real. The lies, the setup, the fake death, the silence, and now it was war. She plays an old voicemail from her mother on a cracked phone. Suspense. Why does her mother say forgive him before it's too late? The emergency lights flashed red and white across the courtroom walls. Alyssa stood frozen as paramedics carried her Uncle Ben out on a stretcher. His shoulder was bleeding, but he was alive. Barely. Her ears rang. From the sound of the gunshot, the courtroom was now empty except for police officers and crime scene tape. One officer tried to lead her outside. She pulled her arm away. I'm not going anywhere, she said. She looked at the bench where her uncle had fallen. She looked. At the cracked window from where the bullet had come, someone had tried to kill him. And someone still wanted her gone too. The old detective now revealed as Detective Harold Greaves walked back in. He handed Alyssa her bag. You need to listen to that voicemail, he said. Now, in a quiet hallway, Alyssa sat alone on a bench, away from the noise, away from the officers, away from the flashing cameras outside the courthouse doors. She took a deep breath and pulled out her cracked phone. She had never opened the voicemail file before. It was copied from the flash drive her father had hidden for 10 years. The screen flickered as she hit play. Her mother's voice came through soft, tired and filled with emotion. Alyssa, sweetheart. If you're hearing this, then something went wrong. Your father. He's not a bad man. He stayed behind because I asked him to. He took the blame because they threatened to kill both of us, but especially you. I told him to run that night, but he said I won't leave Alyssa too. Grow up without answers. If I don't make it, please forgive him before it's too late. There's so much more to tell you, but I'm out of time. And silence. Alyssa didn't move. Tears filled her eyes. Her hands tightened into fists. All these years, she had blamed her father for everything. The nightmares. The loneliness. The questions. She had hated him for what he didn't say. But now, she realized he was silent for her. He had given up his name, his freedom, his life. For her, back at the hospital, Raymond lay in his bed, pale and weak. Machines beeped beside him. His eyes opened slowly as Alyssa stepped into the room. There, eyes met, and for the first time, no words were needed. She walked over, sat beside him, held his hand. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Alyssa took a small breath and said, I heard Mom's message. His eyes widened. I saw Ben, she continued. He's alive. Raymond's lips trembled. He came out of hiding. Alyssa nodded. Someone shot him, but he's going to survive. Her father coughed. Then they'll come after you. Next, I know. Silence. Then Raymond whispered, there's something else, something even your mother didn't know. Alyssa leaned in. He looked toward the window. They were working with someone on the inside, a man in uniform. That night, I saw him. He had a badge. Alyssa's heart dropped. A cop. He nodded. That's why they silenced your mom. That's why they tried to erase everything. Alyssa stood up, eyes burning, and I need to expose them all. Later that evening, Alyssa went to the police station to check on her uncle. He was being guarded after surgery, handcuffed to a hospital bed. She walked in, and for a moment neither of them said a word. Then he smiled faintly. You grew up strong. You faked your death, she replied. I had no choice, he said, coughing. I knew they were coming for me. Your dad begged me to stay, but I ran. He paused. I'm sorry. Alyssa stared at him. You should be, she said. What? The truth. All of it. Names, faces. The man with the tattoo. Ben sighed. There's a name you need to remember. Who? He looked her straight in the eye. Detective Mason Greer. Back in the shadows. A black car parked outside the hospital. Inside. A man in a gray suit, made a phone call. She's getting too close, he said coldly. A voice replied on the other end. Then we moved to the final step. He nodded once. Make it look like an accident. Okay. A dying inmate confesses something. To the warden about that night. Suspense. Could the father have gone to jail for someone else's crime? The gates of Blackridge maximum security prison closed behind warden Ellis with a heavy metallic thud. It was nearly midnight. He was walking back to his office when a young guard approached him nervously. Sir, inmate number 5413 wants to speak with. You, he says it's urgent. The warden frowned. It's Frank Doyle, isn't it? The guard nodded. Warden Ellis sighed. He's been silent for 10 years. Why now? He said it's about Raymond Hale, the guard replied. And he's dying, stage 4 cancer. He doesn't want to die with secrets. The warden thought for a moment, then changed direction. Take me to him. Infirmary, cell block E. Frank Doyle lay on a thin prison bed, his face pale, lips dry. The old inmate was barely breathing. Tubes ran from his arms. A small oxygen tank hissed beside him. Warden Ellis stepped in and closed the door. Frank opened. I thought you'd never come, he croaked. What do you want to say, Doyle? The warden asked. Frank chuckled bitterly. Funny, all these years I kept quiet, took their money, stayed alive. What are you talking about? Frank slowly turned his head. That man, Hale. He didn't kill his wife. The warden's eyes narrowed. You were a witness? Frank nodded. I was working for the wrong people back then. Liveries, threats, cleaning up messes. Nothing big. But that night, I was told to watch a house. A woman inside had documents. A voice recording, they said it couldn't go public. He coughed hard. Blood on his lips. I saw the man who killed her. He had a tattoo on his hand, a snake wrapped around a dagger. Warden Ellis stiffened. Frank continued. Raymond came home too early. He tried to fight him. Got blood on his clothes. He begged me to tell the truth. But I was scared, so I didn't. Frank wiped his mouth, and then they paid me to stay quiet. The warden whispered, Who paid you? Frank smiled faintly. A cop named Greer. Warden Ellis stepped back. You're saying Detective Mason Greer paid you to stay silent? Frank nodded. Still think Blackridge is clean, Warden? You've been playing on the wrong side for years. His eyes slowly closed. Warden, Ellis stared at him in silence. Then Frank's heart monitor, FLAT. Next morning, prison? Security office warden. Ellis reviewed the CCTV footage from 10 years ago. Most tapes were erased after 90 days. But one. Backup still existed, stored by mistake in an old archive it showed. Raymond Hale in an interrogation room. No lawyer. Just him and Detective Mason Greer. Greer slammed his fist on the table. You'll take the fall, Raymond shouted back. I didn't do it. Greer pulled a folder from his coat. This is everything we have on your brother-in-law. If you don't confess, your daughter goes to foster care. You'll both vanish. Face dropped. He looked at the camera in the corner, then lowered his head and said, I'll confess. The screen went dark at the hospital. Raymond's room. Alyssa walked in just as her father was finishing his medicine. She sat beside him, holding her phone. There's something you need to hear, she said, her voice shaky. She pressed play. It was a recording from Warden Ellis's confession. Raymond Hill was set up. I believe Frank Doyle's deathbed confession confirms it. I've seen the tape myself. Detective Mason Greer forced a false confession under threat of taking Hale's daughter. Raymond closed his eyes. A tear slid down his cheek. Alyssa took his hand. I'm sorry, she whispered, for not believing you. Raymond shook his head. No, I'm just glad you know now. She looked at him with pain in her eyes. But Dad, why didn't you ever tell me? Didn't you fight harder? Raymond gave a tired smile. Because if they hurt me, I could take it. But they touched you. I'd never forgive myself. Meanwhile, police headquarters Detective Mason Greer stood in his office. Staring at his phone, he had just received an alert. Inmate number 5413, deceased. Confession sent to Internal Affairs. He crushed his coffee cup in one hand, then turned to the officer outside his door. Get the girl, he growled. Now, the man who once destroyed her family stands in front of Hercom and smiling. Suspense. But this time, Alyssa isn't the little girl who cried behind police tape. The hospital hallway was quiet. Too quiet. Alyssa stood near the vending machine, sipping a paper cup of coffee. Her eyes were tired, but her mind was awake sharper than ever. Her phone buzzed in her hand. It was a text from Detective Harold Greaves. We have enough to issue a warrant. Don't go anywhere alone. Greer is dangerous. Alyssa replied quickly. Understood. I'm still at the hospital with my father. She looked down the hallway at Raymond's room. 2 armed officers stood by his door now. After the last attempt, they weren't taking chances. But then she heard footsteps, slow, confident, polished shoes on hospital tile. She turned. Detective Mason Greer. Gray suit, gold watch, snake tattoo hidden under his sleeve. He walked toward her like he had every right to be there, calm, smiling, eyes empty. Well, he said with fake warmth. The girl who started asking questions. Alyssa didn't move, her hands clenched at her sides. What are you doing here? She asked. Greer looked around casually. Came to check on your father. Heard he wasn't doing well. Alyssa took a step back. He won't be alone with you. Greer chuckled. Relax, I'm not here to hurt anyone. Just wanted to give you some advice? She stared at him. Drop this. All of it, he said coldly. The letters, the flash drive, the so-called confessions. Let the past die. You're a smart girl. You can still walk away. Alyssa's heart was beating fast, but her voice was steady. I used to think monsters looked like shadows, she said. But they wear badges too. Greer's smile faded for a second, but he quickly recovered. You think you're a hero, he said? But you have no idea how deep this goes. Your father wasn't the only one who got dirty. Alyssa's eyes narrowed. Then I'll keep digging. Greer leaned closer. People who dig too much don't always make it to the other side. Psh! Didn't blink? You're afraid? He chuckled again. You think that file and a dead inmate's words are enough? I've buried stronger cases. A voice cut through the air behind them. You won't bury this one. Detective Greaves stepped into view, holding a folder in one hand and a body cam in the other. I've been recording since the moment I walked in. Greer's eyes went cold. You set me up, he said. No, Greaves replied. You set yourself up 10 years ago. We're just pressing play. Hospital security moved in fast. 2 officers grabbed Greer by the arms and cuffed him. He didn't resist. He only looked at Alyssa one last time. You'll regret this. She stepped closer and whispered. No, I regret letting you fool me for 10 years. Later that evening, news report BRAAKANG News, Detective Mason. Greer has been taken into custody after new evidence surfaced, linking him to multiple cover-ups and a false conviction in the Raymond Hale case. Sources say Greer may have worked with others inside the justice system to bury evidence and silence witnesses. A full investigation is underway. Back in Raymond's room, Elisa sat beside her father, who had just woken up after another long night of treatment. She held his hand gently. "They arrested him," she said quietly. Raymond looked at her, eyes full of emotion. "He told me no one would believe me," he whispered. Elisa smiled through tears. "I did." He nodded slowly. "I'm proud of you," he said, voice cracking. She rested her head gently on his chest. For the first time in 10 years, she felt like that little girl again. But this time, the hug wasn't a goodbye. It was the beginning. Courtroom is packed as a dying man returns to defend himself for the first time. Suspense. But someone in the crowd has no intention of letting him finish his testimony alive. The courthouse had never been this full. Reporters lined the steps. Cameras flashed from every angle. Inside, every seat was taken: judges, journalists, former officers, and even citizens who had followed the story on the news. For the first time in over a decade, Raymond Hale would speak in his own defense. Sat in a wheelchair, wrapped in a hospital blanket, oxygen tubes under his nose. A police escort had brought him in under heavy protection. Elisa sat beside him. Her hands were folded, but her heart was pounding. Her father's strength was fading. His body was weak. But his voice, his truth, had never been louder. The judge entered and called for order. This hearing has been reopened to evaluate the wrongful conviction of Mr. Raymond Hale, based on new evidence, including an eyewitness confession, digital files, and the arrest of Detective Mason Greer. The room murmured. Then the judge looked at Raymond. "Mr. Hale, you may speak." Raymond speaks at last. Ramon's hands trembled as he gripped the microphone. His voice was rough but steady. "I've waited 10 years for this moment," he began. "I didn't kill my wife. I loved her. I still do." He looked out at the crowd. "They told me if I didn't confess, they'd take my daughter, put her in the system, destroy her life. So I signed the papers. I said I did it. Let my daughter grow up thinking I was a monster." His voice cracked. "She was only a child. I let her walk away from me, hating me, because I thought it would save her." He paused to catch his breath. But the truth always finds its way, even if it takes a decade. He looked over at Elisa, and my daughter found it. The evidence unfolds. Detective Greaves took the stand next. He presented the flash drive, the surveillance tape, the voicemail from Elisa's mother, the deathbed confession of Frank Doyle, and finally, his own recording of Greer threatening Elisa. Gasps filled the courtroom. The judge's hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the documents. "I have never seen a case so mishandled so intentionally. Buried," he said. But just as he was about to speak again, a loud sound echoed through the room. A shout. A scuffle in the back. A man had stood up, reaching into his jacket. A gun. People screamed. Officers lunged. Elisa jumped in front of her father just as a shot rang out, but the bullet never hit. It struck a metal post near the judge's bench. Seconds later, the gunman was tackled and disarmed. He was a retired officer, a former partner of Mason Greer. After the chaos, Settledale sat on the courtroom floor. Shaking, Raymond had pulled her to the ground with him the moment he saw the weapon. His instinct to protect her was still strong, even with chains on his wrist and IVs in his arm. Officers cleared the room. The gunman was taken away in handcuffs. The judge stood again, his voice heavy with emotion. "In all my years on this bench, I've never seen a man take punishment this silently, only to protect his child. This court hereby declares the conviction of Raymond Hale null and void." Tears filled Elisa's eyes. She looked at her father as the chains around his wrists were removed. "You're free," she whispered. Raymond blinked, stunned. He didn't speak. He simply closed his eyes and exhaled. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Elisa, but she said nothing. She held her father's hand as they stepped into the sun together. For the first time in 10 years, Elisa knew it wasn't over yet. The system that tried to silence them still had shadows, and one name kept haunting her father's files. A name they hadn't touched yet. Director Wells was the one who pulled all the strings. Raymond whispers a single name before fainting. Director Wells. Suspense. Who is Wells? And why does even Detective Greaves go silent when he hears the name? The sun had barely risen when Alyssa stood at her kitchen counter, phone in hand, staring at a name scribbled on a yellowed note from her father's hospital folder. Wells, do not trust him. She had heard the name before once, in a whispered conversation between two officers outside her father's hearing. Back then, it had meant nothing. Now, it felt like a bomb ticking in her palm. Raymond was back in the hospital, recovering from the courtroom shock and the chaos that nearly got him killed. His body was failing, but his mind still burned with memories and secrets. Just before he fainted in the ambulance, he had pulled her close and whispered, "If you want the full truth, find Wells. It's elsewhere, a dark office unlisted." Location: a man in a black suit sat behind a desk with no nameplate. The lights were dim. The walls were SOUNDPRO. He spoke into a secure line. "Greer's gone. Hale's free. And the girl won't stop." The voice on the other end asked coldly, "Does she know about us?" "Not yet. She's getting close." A pause. Then, "Activate Protocol 9. Double quotes." Click. The man leaned back, eyes full of quiet power. Director Wells, the real mastermind. Police archive. Basement. 2 days later, Alyssa and Detective Greaves stood over a locked drawer deep in the police archives. Greaves had pulled strings to get access without alerting the higher-ups. He inserted a master key, twisted twice, and pulled it open. Inside, one black folder, no label, no date, just a symbol on the cover, an ancient alchemy sign for hidden. Alyssa opened it slowly. Photos, maps, surveillance logs, names of informants, and right in the middle, a personnel file for Director Marcus. Wells' Internal Security Affairs stamped, classified, not for civilian REVIW. Greaves stepped back. "I've worked this department for 25 years. I've never seen his name in our records," Alyssa whispered. "Then he's not just a cop." Greaves looked at her grimly. "He's something much higher." Flashback: 11 years ago, younger Raymond Hale sat in an interrogation room, not in a police station, but inside a federal building. Gray walls. No windows. Across from him sat a man with clean hands and sharper eyes. "Wells, you have two choices, Mr. Hale," Wells said softly. "Play your part or lose your daughter." Raymond slammed his fists on the table. "I didn't kill anyone." Wells didn't flinch. "But if you take the fall, the files disappear. The girl lives. Your brother vanishes. The story dies." Raymond's breath shook. Wells smiled faintly. "And I get peace. Back in the present." Greaves paced. "This is bigger than Greer, bigger than the police." Alyssa stared at a list of names linked to Wells' files. Most were blacked out. Few had D marked beside them. "What does the D mean?" she asked. Greaves looked closer. His face changed. Deceased. Her throat tightened. Every person who had gotten too close to exposing Wells had ended up dead. Suddenly, her name didn't feel safe anywhere. Later that night, Alyssa's apartment, her phone buzzed. "Unknown number. You want answers? Meet me." 1 hour. No cops. Attached was a location pin. It led to a storage unit outside city limits. She hesitated, then texted Greaves. "I have a lead. If I don't respond in 2 hours, track me." No. She zipped up her jacket and left. Storage facility. 11:59 p.m. Cold wind howled through the narrow lanes of metal doors. Alyssa walked to unit 43. The door was open. Inside, a single chair. A single man. Old, thin, pale. He turned slowly. "You don't know me," he rasped. "But I knew your mother, and I knew Wells." Alyssa's voice trembled. "Who are you?" He held up a flash drive. "The last piece Wells thought he destroyed. But I kept it." She stepped forward cautiously. "What's on it?" He looked at her with tired eyes. "The night your mother died." She wasn't the only one he was trying to silence. He handed her the drive, then whispered, "Be careful." And collapsed. Alyssa plugs in the flash drive and finds a hidden folder called Operation Quiet Daughter. Suspense. The final video shows her mother's last moments, and someone standing behind her with a badge. The old man's body still lay, slumped against the wall inside the cold storage unit. Alyssa stood frozen, in her hand, a flash drive small, and black with a red sticker labeled W-Do, not duplicate. Her hands were shaking as she backed out of the unit and called 911. Then she called Detective Greaves, but her voice was firm now. No more tears, no more hiding. She had the last piece, and she was going to use it. An hour later, Detective Greaves' apartment cleared off his table. Alyssa plugged in the flash drive. It clicked softly into the laptop. A single folder appeared. System_W. Inside it were dozens of files. Voice recordings, maps, surveillance logs, financial transfers, and one final video file. Final_cam_march12.mp for Alyssa. Clicked play. The videoette was grainy, but clear enough to recognize faces. Her mother sat at the dining table. Flipping through pages, Alyssa now realized were the very files Greer and Wells wanted destroyed. She looked up suddenly. A shadow entered the frame. A man, wearing a long coat, a gold badge clipped to his belt. Director Marcus Wells. He didn't raise a gun. He didn't shout. He simply said, "We warned you." Her mother stood slowly, voice shaking. "You don't scare me anymore." Wells stepped forward and whispered, "Then this will hurt." The screen blurred as a struggle broke out. A second later, blood splattered the papers. Her mother collapsed. The camera kept rolling. Wells turned toward it, walked over and unplugged it. The screen went black. Alyssa stared at the laptop. Tears ran down her face. Her breath came out in sharp gasps. Greaves stood beside her, frozen. "This is it," he whispered. "The final proof?" He opened another folder. Inside were names of payouts coded under QD Fund. Quiet Daughter Fund. The entries listed dates and amounts sent to different officers, judges, and even journalists. All to suppress her mother's case. Alyssa whispered. They didn't just kill her. They buried everything about her, even paid to rewrite the headlines. Greaves opened a final log. At the bottom it read, "Last priority target, Alyssa Hale. Status pending. Active. Authorization, MW date, 6 days ago. Alyssa's blood. Went cold. They were planning to kill me," she whispered. Greaves nodded. That shooter in the courtroom, it was the start. The decision. Alyssa took a deep breath. She backed up the drive 3 times, sent copies to 4 trusted reporters anonymously. Then she uploaded the video to a private cloud. Greaves looked at her. "You sure about this?" She nodded. "The world deserves to know." He placed his hand on her shoulder. "Once we release this, there's no going back." Alyssa stared at the frozen image of Wells' face on the video still. "Good," she said. "Let it all burn." Elsewhere inside a black car, Wells sat in the back seat. Eyes locked on a live news ticker. Breaking. Evidence surfaces in Hale case. New video. Implicates federal director. His hand trembled. He took out a phone and called a number. "Clean it up," he barked. "Now." The voice on the other end paused. "It's too late." The girl went public. Wells slammed the phone shut. For the first time in years. He looked afraid. Within 24 hours of releasing the video, Alyssa's bank accounts are frozen, her job disappears, and someone breaks into her apartment. Suspense. If exposing the truth costs her everything, will she still keep fighting? Alyssa never expected the truth to come with applause, but she also never expected it to come with silence. Heavy, terrifying silence. 20-4 hours after she released the files, there were no reporters at her door, no trending hashtags, no protective agents sent to her hospital room. Just ... silence, until everything started collapsing. The fallout begins 10:03 a.m. Her phone buzzed. "Bank alert. Your account has been frozen due to suspicious activity. Please contact support." She tried to log in. Access denied. She tried her second account. Also locked. 10:17 a.m., a call from her office. Don't come in today, Alyssa. Your position has been eliminated due to restructuring, effective immediately. Was still holding the phone when it buzzed again. A notification from her apartment building, door forced open, she ran. Her apartment, 2:11:05 a.m., the door was hanging on its hinges. Drawers open, laptop. Missing her childhood photos ripped from the walls, but strangest of all, her mother's necklace was gone. It had no value, just sentimental. Wait, whoever broke in wasn't after money. They were after memories, control, fear, intimidation. But Alyssa wasn't afraid anymore. She was furious. Hospital Raymond's room, she burst in, eyes wild. Dad, they're trying to erase me now, just like they erased you. Raymond looked up slowly. He had grown weaker, paler, thinner. But when he heard what she said, his hand clenched the blanket. They're scared, he whispered. That means they're cornered. Alyssa nodded. Then I need to hit back harder. She pulled a USB from her pocket. I kept the original flash drive hidden. He paused. I want to testify publicly. I want to speak in front of a live audience. Let them try to silence me with cameras watching. Raymond's eyes filled with tears. You have your mother's fire? She held his hand. No, Dad. I have your strength too. Later that night, anonymous tip Alyssa received a blocked call. The voice on the other end was mechanical. I saw the video. I used to work for Wells. There's more. Meet me. 9 p.m. City Overpass. Before she could reply, the call cut off. She stared at the phone. She had been warned about traps. But if there was a chance to expose more, she had to go City Overpass to 9:07 p.m. Cold wind blew through the steel beams above. Alyssa waited, her phone recording in her coat pocket, then dashed footsteps. A man approached with his face mostly covered, gloved hands. Udlow. He handed her an envelope. Everything Wells didn't want in digital form. Paper trails, signatures, offshore transfers. She opened it slightly. Documents, names, a handwritten order with Wells. Signature authorizing containment of the Hale family. She looked up to thank him, but he was already gone, vanished into the shadows. Meanwhile, Federal Building, Marcus. Wells sat in his underground office watching a wall of monitors. Alyssa was on half of them. News was starting to spread. Whispers were turning into headlines, and then his aide rushed in. Internal Affairs is issuing a subpoena. They want your testimony. Wells didn't blink. He leaned back in his chair and whispered, then it's time to disappear. Back in Alyssa's apartment, she scanned the new documents. Cross-referenced. Names. Made copies. Uploaded everything to 3 encrypted clouds. Suddenly her phone rang again. This time, it was Detective Greaves. Get out of your apartment now, he shouted. They just cleared Wells' office. He's gone rogue. His last thread. Alyssa froze, then grabbed her jacket. But as she reached the door, the lights cut out. Footsteps creaked outside. A slow knock echoed. Tap, tap, the lights are out. Footsteps approach. The only way out is through the man who destroyed her. Life. Suspense. Can Alyssa survive when Wells finally steps out of the shadows? Tap. 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 The knocking at the door felt like thunder. The room was pitch black. Only the soft red glow of her laptop's battery light flickered from across the room. Alyssa's breath caught in her throat. She moved slowly, quietly, backing into the hallway as the knocking turned to a slow turn of the doorknob. It was locked, but not for long. She grabbed her phone, trembling, and texted, to Greaves. He's here. Apartment. Lights out. No reply. Just a single, unread gray checkmark. She looked around. No weapons. No tools. Only the heavy flashlight from the emergency drawer. She picked it up and tightened her grip. Crack. The door frame splintered. Boot steps entered the room. A figure stepped inside. Deliberate, wearing a long black coat. His face wasn't visible, just the flash of something silver beneath his wrist. Wells, the man who murdered her mother, framed. Her father, and now stood 10 feet away. "Wells speaks, you've been busy," said voice calm, cruel, like a teacher scolding a student. Alyssa didn't answer. He stepped closer. "Those files, all those videos, you think the truth is enough to stop men like me?" He raised his hand slowly and showed her something. A lighter. Her mother's necklace dangled from his fingers, looped around it like a trophy. "I took this the night I buried your story," he said. Alyssa's grip tightened on the flashlight. Wells took one more step forward. "And now I finish what I started," she Strexby, before he could say another word. Lisa swung the flashlight. Crack! It slammed into Wells' jaw. He stumbled, dropping the lighter. She grabbed the nearest object a coat rack hand, shoved it toward him. He tripped, fell backward, but caught himself fast. He lunged. She ran. The stairwell, she burst into the hallway and ran for the stairs, heart pounding. Every shadow looked like a threat, but as she turned the corner, Wells was already waiting. He must have used the fire escape. He raised a small pistol. "Stop running." But Alyssa didn't. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and sprayed it full force into his face. He screamed, blinded. She bolted down the stairs. Outside, parking lot train poured. As she burst through the back exit and into the alley behind her building, she turned a corner and nearly collapsed into Detective Greaves. He grabbed her shoulders. "You okay?" She nodded, shaking. "He's inside. He has a gun." And he took her necklace. Greaves turned to his backup, sealed the building, no one in or out. Alyssa gripped his arm. "We can't let him escape again." Greaves looked at her, dead serious. "We won't." Minutes later, inside the building, SWAT swept floor by floor, room by room. But Wells was gone. Only one window was open on the 6th floor. A fire escape led to the rooftop, then vanished. He had vanished too, but the necklace was left behind, bloodied, bent, and hanging from the doorknob, like a warning, or a promise. Back at the hospital, Ramon's room, Alyssa sat beside her father again, her hands trembling slightly. She placed the broken necklace in his hand. "I faced him, Dad," she said softly. "And I didn't run." Raymond opened his tired eyes. "You didn't need me to protect you," he whispered. "You became stronger than I ever was." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but he got away. Raymond squeezed her hand, not for long. Across the city, unknown location, Wells sat alone in a basement office with flickering lights. His coat was stained, his lips swollen, but his eyes still burned with fury. He picked up a phone and called a number. "I need extraction." "The girl gone before sunrise." The voice on the other end replied, "Negative. You're not in charge anymore." Click for the first time. Wells wasn't feared. He was alone. Raymond senses his time is near, but before he goes, he asks Alyssa to do something that breaks her heart. Suspense. Will Alyssa honor her father's dying wish, even if it means letting go of revenge? The hospital room was dim, with only the soft beep of machines breaking the silence. Alyssa sat beside her father, watching him fade a little more each day. His skin was pale, his breaths were shallow, but his eyes still held fire. He had survived prison, shame, betrayal, silence, but now his body was giving up, and he knew it. A quiet conversation. Raymond turned his head toward her, voice a whisper. "Alyssa." "I'm here," she said, holding his hand tightly. "There's something I need you to do," he said. "Something only you can." She leaned in, her heart already heavy. "I want you to stop chasing him." Alyssa froze. "What? Want you to stop chasing Wells?" Her jaw clenched. "After everything he did? To you? To Mom?" Raymond nodded, slowly, painfully. "I know," he said. "But I don't want your life to become like mine, full of war, shadows, and ghosts." Alyssa's eyes filled with tears. "He's still out there." Raymond smiled faintly. "I know, but he's already lost. The world knows now. He'll spend the rest of his life running, afraid." He paused. "I'm free, Alyssa. Truly free. Don't let him steal that from you." "Now?" She breaks. Alyssa stood up and paced the room. wiping her eyes. "I thought revenge would make me feel whole," she whispered. Raymond's voice was soft. "It won't, I know. I chased it for years in my head, even behind bars. But peace only comes when we lay it down." She turned to him. "So what do I do now?" He smiled through weak lips. "Live loudly for both of us." Later that night, she sat by his bedside in silence. They didn't talk much, just sat. She played a recording of her mother's favorite song. Her father closed his eyes and whispered, "Tell her I kept my promise." The next morning, Raymond Hale took his last breath at 6:47 a.m. A nurse quietly turned off the machines. Alyssa didn't cry at first. She just held his hand until it turned cold. And then, finally, she let go. The funeral, it was quiet. Private, a few reporters tried to sneak in, but Alyssa had asked for no cameras, just her and the truth. She buried him next to her mother. It's finally bringing them back together after all these years. On his grave, she placed two things: the broken necklace and the cleared conviction notice, folded like a flag. Across the city, federal notice: the Justice Department released a public statement. Raymond Hale's conviction has been overturned. An internal task force has been launched to investigate systemic corruption involving director Marcus Wells and several unnamed officials. A reward has been posted for Wells' location. Alyssa's decision back home. Alyssa stared at her wall, now covered in photos, maps, and notes. Her war room, all of it. She picked up a match, lit it, and dropped it. The papers burned slowly. The room filled with the scent of old ink and fresh peace. She was letting it go, just as her father asked. But in the back of her closet, she kept one folder locked away, just in case. Days after the funeral, Alyssa receives a sealed envelope from a prison chaplain written by Raymond before his death. Suspense. Inside the letter lies one final truth, and a choice that could change her life forever. It had been 6 days since the funeral. Alyssa had stopped answering her phone, stopped checking the news. She needed stillness, peace. But then came a knock on the door. This time, it wasn't danger. It was a quiet man in a priest's collar, Chaplain Reuben, from Blackridge Prison. He handed her a sealed envelope, yellowed slightly, with her name written in careful, shaking letters. "To Alyssa, when I'm gone. Love, Dad." She invited the chaplain in, but he shook his head gently. "He asked me to deliver it in person," he said. "Said it would matter more that way." Then he left, and she stood alone with her father's final words in her hand. The letter. Alyssa sat at the kitchen table. Rain tapped softly on the windows. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope. Inside was a folded letter and something else, a key. She unfolded the paper and began to read. "My dearest Alyssa, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. Didn't want to say goodbye with machines around us. I wanted to say it when I could still breathe like a father. First, I need you to know how proud I am of you. You didn't just survive. You fought back. You uncovered truths even I was too afraid to face. Your mother would be so proud. She was the fire. You were her flame. But there's one last thing you deserve to know. A truth I never had the courage to say aloud. That night, your mother wasn't the target. You were." Alyssa's breath caught. She read on faster now. She found something in Wells' files, a name buried deep. Called Genesis Daughter. It was about using children of whistleblowers as leverage or worse, experiments in control. "I don't know everything, but I know this. She died protecting you. I kept quiet, not just for your safety, but because she made me promise one thing. Don't let her grow up with blood in her hands. Let her grow up free. That's why I asked you to let Wells go. But I know you. I know what burns in you. So I've left behind one final trail if you choose to follow it. The key in this envelope opens a storage locker under my name, Unit 17B on North Maple Street. Inside is everything. Every file I saved, every risk I took, the names of men who still hide in the dark. If you choose peace, burn it. If you choose truth, open it. I won't ask you which one to pick. I'll only say, whatever you do, I already love you for it. Always and forever. Dad, her choice. Alyssa sat in silence for a long time. The rain outside grew stronger. She placed the letter on the table, beside the key, and stared. Hours passed. Then she stood, put on her coat, and walked out into the storm. Storage facility, North Maple Street, Unit 17B, creaked as the metal door lifted. Inside, she found one box marked in red, "For truth only." She placed her hand on it, closed her eyes, and whispered, "You kept your promise, Dad. Now it's my turn." Alyssa opens the final box and finds not only documents, but a single voice recording her father left. One he never intended anyone else to hear. Suspense. As she listens, she discovers her father's darkest secret, and the final piece that could destroy Wells forever. The storage unit smelled of old paper and rusted metal. Alyssa knelt before the box marked "For truth only," her father's handwriting bold and final across the top. She stared at it for a long time, then opened. The lid. Inside were folders, tapes, and one small black device labeled "Play Last." Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She sat on the cold floor, knees drawn up, and pressed play. The final recording. If you're hearing this, Alyssa, it means I'm gone, and you've made your choice. Her father's voice crackled through the small speaker, tired, honest. "There's one thing I never told anyone, not even Greaves, not the lawyers, not even your mother." Alyssa held her breath. Wasn't alone. He answered to a man named Carter Voss. No one knows him. No one sees him. But I saw his face once, through a crack in a courtroom door. He's the reason your case was sealed. He's the reason they erased your mother from the headlines. Wells is just the wolf. Voss is the one who built the cage. Inside this box is the only evidence I could gather on him: names, payments, projects. If you take this public, it won't just shake the system, it will break it. But it will put a target on your back the size of a country. So if you choose to let this stay buried, I'll understand. Oh. Already done more than I ever could. But if you choose the fire, then I know you didn't just carry my name, Alyssa. You carried my fight, and win or lose, I love you for that. The recording ended, and for a moment the silence felt like thunder. The final file. Alyssa dug deeper into the box. At the bottom was a sealed envelope stamped C. VOSS, do not open. She opened it. Inside were receipts of international travel, a copy of a secret court order signed under a false name, a photograph of Carter Voss and Marcus Wells together laughing, with a date on the corner. 2 days after her mother's death. Alyssa gripped the photo so tightly her knuckles turned white. 1 week later, national broadcast The Nation paused for a breaking news report. A woman stood at a podium. She wore black. Her voice was clear. Her name was Alyssa Hale, and she told the world everything about her mother, about the false trial, about Greer, about Wells, about Voss, and about the box her father left behind. The impact by sunset. Arrest warrants were issued. Wells was found in a cargo ship trying to flee the country. Carter Voss had disappeared, but his name was everywhere now. Congress launched a full investigation into secret programs buried under Genesis projects, and across the world, for the first time, people said the name Raymond Hale with honor. One final scene. Alyssa stood by her parents' graves. She held a fresh flower in one hand. In the other, her father's cleared criminal record, now framed. She placed it gently between the two headstones and whispered, "It's over now." But she knew in her heart it wasn't really over, because justice wasn't a moment. It was a choice, a battle, a promise, and she would keep fighting. In her father's shadow.